Hello, I am Jessica Reed-Robbins and welcome to my video series on achieving the impossible. I'm a performance coach and I've been helping people for 15 years to achieve whatever it is that they want to be, do and have. And most of the time when people come to me, it's because they feel that something they want is impossible and they've tried everything they can think of to try and achieve it, or they've been told it's impossible. And my job is to help them figure out what we need to change around their thinking process and therefore their doing process in order to let them be, do or have whatever it is that they want. Similarly, I've been doing this for organizations for the same length of time. So anything that a team is trying to achieve but is failing to achieve, my job is to look at what's preventing them from having what they want and the levels of success that usually their hard work should normally deserve. So my job is to find out what it is you're working against and remove those obstacles, so what you actually want becomes effortless. So long gone are the days of needing to sort of push harder or motivate yourself. My job is to make it easier and kind of align you with it. So my job today is to convince you that limiting beliefs are the only thing stopping you from achieving what you want, and it's a hard sell. So I'm going to show you some science to show you, and hopefully demonstrate it as well, so that you actually feel it in the moment that, oh my goodness, that is absolutely what's happening. By the end of this series of videos, I want you to know how to set outcomes. So know how to set outcomes in the way that your brain actually operates and understands. So gone are the days of SMART goals and writing things down. It doesn't work as efficiently as engaging your brain. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm also going to, by the end of this series, hopefully you will understand what obstacles are in the way, but also how to remove them. And then by the end of this series, I also want to talk a little bit about resilience and success, and how your everyday mindset can help you continue that journey and be resilient along the way, so that setbacks and things like that are just all part of your inevitable success. As I said earlier, limiting beliefs are the only things holding you back from achieving whatever you want. So I'm going to demonstrate this to you by explaining how your brain works. If you think about your brain and the amount of information that you have to process in any single second, it's enormous. It's unfathomable. There's literally billions of bits of data bombarding your senses at any one time. So it is your brain's job to kind of filter that information to help you to cope in your environment. And obviously, a lot of that information is going to be disregarded because it's just not important to you. Also, similarly, a lot of that information is going to be processed through what we call your generalization, so your existing beliefs. So I'm going to show you that actually a lot of what you think you're seeing is really versions of what you've already seen before, so versions of what you can comprehend. So you actually start seeing things in terms of what you already believe, and you tend to look at evidence that proves what you already believe and disregard evidence for things, or don't even see evidence for things that contradicts what you already believe. And therefore your brain can keep you in an environment that feels familiar and secure. Because if we can predict what's going to happen in our environment, it does make us feel safe. It simplifies our brain's job and keeps us essentially alive and prospering. Now, the third thing that your brain does that I'll show you is it twists information. So what you often think you see is actually a version of reality that has been impacted by your brain already. And your brain has already decided for you what you should see, what would make more sense to you, and therefore presents something that would make more sense to you rather than what is actually there. Now, that's quite a scary concept for people, because if we can't believe what we're seeing, if we can't believe what we're hearing as real, then, you know, we're in the matrix and it's all a bit disconcerting. Now, all it does for me is further kind of bolsters my my belief that you need to understand what your beliefs are, because whatever your beliefs are is what you're going to be experiencing. So essentially, if there is something in your life that you don't want to be experiencing, then my job would be to help you look at your beliefs as to why you keep seeing and experiencing the same things over and over again, especially things you don't want. Let's have a little look, first of all, at our first kind of filter that our brain does, and that's deletion. So I'm just going to play you a little video and then I'll ask you some questions about it.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
How observant were you? Did you notice that there were 21 continuity errors in just that short little video? And usually some people will notice one or two, but to get 21, that takes a lot of doing. So I'll play the video again, and this time see if you can count the number of changes and see if you can find all 21. Okay.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
And action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
if you think about back to the video, how many changes did you spot? Even when you knew they were 21, it probably would have been pretty hard. And the reason is your brain also is trying to help you focus on what's important about the video. So usually that would be the story and not necessarily what people are wearing and so on. You have to know to pay attention to those elements, because your brain, unless you've given your brain the instruction they're important, will just kind of direct your attention to the very limited amount that you can take in. Already start to be thinking about your reality that you think that you know and that you think that you're in charge of. Already there is a huge amount happening in your universe you are unaware of. And sometimes I kind of give people the analogy that we're all walking around, you know, with these kind of very limited spectacles that are paying attention to a tiny fraction of the information that's surrounding us. So, for example, somebody might say to you, oh, there just aren't any jobs for someone like me. There are no decent men left that are single. And of course, if you walk around focusing on something else, like all of the jobs that aren't available for you, or the men that aren't available, or the single men that you don't like, then of course that will become your universe. So, you know, if you want more positive things in your life, then you need to start looking for them. And one exercise that you can do just to start noticing, what are you focused on? So if you're watching this video series because you want to achieve something in life, then start focusing on it rather than on what you have currently. First filter then is deletion. And what we say is you get what you focus on. Your brain's attention, your reticular activating system, it's called, is designed to look for things that you give energy and focus to. So energy and emotion, whatever it is that you think about, focus on consciously, dream about, that is what your attention will be directed to. That's the first filter. Next filter that we're going to look at in achieving the impossible is something called generalization. And again, this is a big topic that I'm going to try and condense. So generalization is essentially your map of the world. So everything that you think that you know about the world gets stored in your database, in your unconscious mind. The problem with generalization is that it oversimplifies everything. So let's have a look at this next video that demonstrates, I think, our prejudices, because that's essentially what generalizations can do. They prejudice against the information that we're receiving. And this is a really great example of an advert that kind of shows us how we do that. And the fact is that we do it. It's perfectly natural that we do it. We just need to know that we're doing it. So let's have a look at the next video.
An event seen from one point of view gives one impression. Seen from another point of view, it gives quite a different impression. But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
Okay, so hopefully you could see that video there. So initially, when I'm teaching groups, I ask them, I say, what was your first assumption around watching this guy dressed the way he's dressed, looking the way he's looking, running away? looking or seeming as if he's running away from a car that's pulling around the corner. And of course, our assumptions are that he's running away from something. He's up to no good. We make assumptions about the way he's dressed. To the nth degree as well. We can decide what he believes, what his motives are. We really do believe that unconsciously we know something about someone from the way that they're dressed or the way that they're moving and so on. And then it switches to another view where we suddenly see there's a smartly dressed gentleman, and he is seemingly running after him. And again, we can make assumptions about what that looks like. And it's only when time and perspective changes and we suddenly see that this person is actually trying to save his life. So generalizations are our set of beliefs that we hold unconsciously about everything. And the problem with that is that we oversimplify everything. So just because, let's say you've been dumped, or somebody's broke up with you, and in your mind, your generalization about that is it's bad. You've been rejected, it's terrible, you'll never love again, and so on. It's an oversimplification, because this event is not like the other events. It is unique and separate and different and full of different opportunities. It's only when we decide that it's the same that it will end up the same. The next thing that we're going to look at is the third filter, which is kind of the one that causes all the problems, essentially, and it's distortion, because this is the most dangerous filter in our perceptual filters, because it operates without us being aware that it's operating. So what we think is reality is often nowhere close to reality. Okay, so there's something now that's really, this is where distortion, this filter really is important that we understand. And it's something called the law of confirmation bias. So if the demonstration is I ask an audience, what are you looking at? And they'll often say it's a checkerboard. And there are two squares on that checkerboard, one labeled A and one labeled B. And then the question is to the audience, are those squares the same colour or different colours? Now, especially when there's a poster in the room where people can actually look at it and touch it and kind of examine it close up, it is almost impossible to see those squares as the same colour. So they will always see them as different. And yet, squares A and B are precisely the same colour. And if I show you how that works, so you look at A and B, keep your eye on A, and then keep your eye on B, you'll see that they're exactly the same colour. Now, obviously, because of perspective, because of the shadow that's cast, that's why essentially the white square has become darker because there's a shadow on it, and then becomes the same colour as square A. Now, most people will be like, well, why? I don't understand. How is that happening? Well, it's happening because the moment that your brain sees that as a checkerboard, there are certain things that we know that must maintain true about a checkerboard in order that we can deal with it, that we can operate it. And one of those truisms or things that we believe we know about checkerboards is that all the squares must be light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. If they weren't, we wouldn't be able to play chess, we wouldn't be able to play the game, because we wouldn't know what squares were what. So here, all that's happening is that your brain sees what's actually going on. It sees those colours are the same and therefore distorts them for you, so you can still play chess on the checkerboard, so you can still maintain use of it. Now, for you to be able to see those colours as the same, quite often you have to take away the rest of the board. So if you've got your, if you can, put your hands on the screen and cover up the other squares, you'll see it's completely obvious that those squares are the same. Otherwise, I'll help you. Just put that on there. So this is where, this is the kind of frightening part of the law of confirmation bias, because once you expect to see something, your brain will twist reality to ensure that that's what you see. So if you believe something is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, it has to be true. And you'll only look at evidence that proves that that's the case. And you won't see the opportunities or the evidence that actually contradicts that belief. And let's say whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in your life, whatever that is, you need to believe that you can have it, so that you can start filtering in the evidence that you can have it, the opportunities. So now we've got 3 filters that are operating as one system. So we have a set of beliefs that are true in your world, and then we have a filtering system that allows us to focus on certain bits of information and disregard the rest to make things simple. And of those that information that we are processing, that we are allowing in, our brain twists most of it to fit in with those beliefs. The next thing that we need to think about is how these filters and everything else all work together to create what we call and what we know as the self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is, often people think that the self-fulfilling prophecy is not scientific, and actually it is scientific. The self-fulfilling prophecy is absolutely scientific. All that happens is, because you believe something, you act as if it's true, and your actions will often elicit the very response that you're expecting. Now, there was an experiment done with Dr. Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson in a school. You might have heard this experiment. All the students in a school were tested, and the research team, they selected just a random number of children, and they told their teachers that these children would be expected to bloom academically in the following year. So they had kind of made out that this, I think it was the Harvard test of inflected acquisition, something like that, something made up test that said that they could predict academic blooming. And so each teacher was given a handful of students' names, and these students were allegedly going to blossom academically in the year to come. So no matter what they'd done before, that next year was going to be their year. And of course, then they re-scored some IQ tests. So they did IQ tests at the beginning, and they did IQ tests at the end of the following year. And surprise, surprise, the children who had been thought or alleged to bloom academically had done. And of course, there was no reason for this other than them telling the teacher that this was going to happen. And they had observed and measured what was happening across that year. And what they noticed was the way the teacher behaved towards those children who were supposed to bloom was completely different to the other children. And in every way actually helped them to achieve more. So they expected more, they called on them more, they were nicer, more rewarding to those students who were supposed to bloom, and also kind of more critical of them. So they would expect more from them and help them to to, for example, give a better answer. If they gave a kind of flippant answer, they would draw out a better answer, as opposed to a student they didn't think much of. If giving a less than adequate answer, they would just be like, yeah, okay, great, anyone else? This goes to show that our expectations, especially of other people, but our expectations of life, cause us to behave in a certain way that often elicits that very reaction, that very event that we're expecting. And self-fulfilling prophecy is real and is so important that in order to create a different prophecy, we need to change our expectations, and to do that we need to change our generalizations, our beliefs. We don't want to deal with all of our limiting beliefs. We want to find the ones that are disempowering us now and only deal with those ones. Where do these beliefs come from? So if we just have a look at the slide here, the kind of the analogy that I give is, imagine that you wanted to train a massive elephant to lug some logs for you. Let's say you were in a country where that was what you did. You used large elephants. You could drag trees around for you without thinking about it. Well, most of the time, if you went up to a very large elephant and said, "Excuse me, can you help me move these logs?" you'd get trampled to death without a second thought. So you would want to use a baby elephant that hasn't learned that humans are bad, and also that elephant is kind of a blank slate. So the more baby it is, the more blank slate you've got. Okay, so take out the animal cruelty aspects of this, because that's not what I'm advocating, but I'm demonstrating what would happen. And imagine that you took that baby elephant and you put a little green rope around its leg, just strong enough to stop it from breaking. So you tie a stake in the put a stake in the ground and tie one end of the rope to that and the other around the elephant's leg. And then what would happen is that that elephant would essentially learn that no matter what direction it walks in, it can't escape the green rope. So as soon as the green rope's around its leg, it's stuck. Now, it's not stupid, so eventually it would see the green rope and stop trying, because it would end up hurting if you kept pushing against something continuously and you never learned. So luckily, the elephant will learn pretty quickly that once that green rope's on, don't move, because there's no point. And that then becomes a generalization about the green rope and its ability. So I cannot escape the green rope is most likely what the elephant will learn. Now, as that elephant gets bigger, obviously, the generalization is stuck, because we don't tend to question our generalizations. So no matter how big the elephant gets, that green rope is still stronger than it is. So even with a massive, fully grown elephant, tons and tons full of elephant, you could tie chains to the elephant and it will break them. But you put that tiny green rope on its leg and it would be like, oh, well, there's no point moving anywhere because I can't escape that. So that's how our beliefs and limiting, our disempowering beliefs can affect us so many years later. Because when we're told something when we're little, like you're clumsy, you're stupid, you're no good at maths, we make those generalizations and cast them in stone in our unconscious mind. And then doesn't matter if we grow up and actually, well, you have different resources now, you're more capable, you could find a way around anything. those beliefs stick. So usually between the ages of 0 and 7, we are absorbing information from everywhere, all sources all around us. So a lot of the beliefs that we have go straight in to our unconscious mind, and they're not criticized, they're not analyzed, they're just stuck. So anything anybody tells you, teachers, parents, siblings, you haven't got a critical faculty to challenge those words. So if a teacher tells you that you're stupid, it's very easy to just believe it. It's why children will believe about Tooth Fairy, about Christmas and so on, because they don't have a way of challenging or analysing data that's coming in. And once they get older, they can start to challenge it, but you have to know that you believe something in order to challenge it. And if it feels completely and utterly true, and of course you've been collecting evidence, because once you believe it, you will collect evidence, it feels insurmountable, because you have an overwhelmingly big case for that belief to be true. This is how I feel like achievement should feel. So when you want something, so it should feel like, yes, that's what I want, and I'm just going to go and get it. So something simple like a glass of water, I think about it and then I just go and get my glass of water. Simple. Maybe I don't get a round of applause, but it's super simple to go and get it. Most of the time when somebody wants to achieve something, it feels more like this. It feels a bit like there's something in the way, and I've tried and tried, and now I've given up because there's, maybe it's not for me. So usually people will say, oh, I've tried everything, and they usually have tried a few things. They haven't probably tried everything, but they've tried a few things, and all they've done essentially is looked for enough evidence to prove what they already think, which is that it's impossible. So that is usually what people are doing. So take any sales team. When I'm called in to help a sales team, usually it's the sales manager has been pulling their hair out, because naturally with a sales team you set enormous targets, because everybody wants to make money. The sales team wants to make money, they make commission. The company wants to make money, the sales manager wants to make money. So naturally it makes sense to set targets that are really high. The problem then that you then face is when that sales manager is talking to people towards the end of the month and people haven't made their sales, their targets. What tends to happen in those meetings is a justification of why it is impossible. So essentially, somebody will sit down with their sales manager and they'll say, look, I've done X, Y, Z. What I'm going to do for the rest of the month to try and make my target is, A, B, C. But essentially, they're justifying, look, it is impossible, but these are the things I'm doing to try. And it's the completely wrong way around to do it. So we need to start off accepting and appreciating, hey guys, these targets are impossible. They feel impossible. That's what's fun about them. And now what we need to do is look at our limiting beliefs. So in your team, let everyone have their targets, and then you sit round and you get a flip chart and you say, right, why are these targets impossible? What are my beliefs about why these targets are too high? And you air those beliefs and you say, I'll never get that done. Nobody's buying. People won't pay that much. It's too close to the end of the month. People aren't, people are Brexit and so on and so on. You use whatever comes up as your reasons why they're impossible, and you get them out in the open. Because what the sales manager needs to understand is what are essentially the beliefs that you're going to spend the rest of the month proving true. Because if no one's buying, you're going to spend the rest of the month proving that that's true. So what I recommend and work with sales teams, let's hear what these limiting beliefs are and challenge them now so that you can have better beliefs and spend the next 29 days proving them true instead, because you're going to put the same amount of effort in either way. So I would rather spend all of my effort proving things true, that, you know, the beliefs that I want to be true, than spend all that effort proving my limiting beliefs true. Same effort, different result. Being open about what your limiting beliefs are, what are the garbage pails that you keep banging your head against, just acknowledge what they are. They feel true, we know that because I've demonstrated to you earlier that often reality looks a certain way, but actually when you challenge it, it's not that way at all. So that's what we need to do. Okay, this is then the way that I operate around limiting beliefs. We get rid of the obstacle and we move forward. Now, we only need to get rid of the obstacle that's right in front of us at any one time. So again, remember I said you've got loads of limiting beliefs. Which ones do we get rid of? The one that's in front of you first, like the first one that comes up for you. Then when you've got rid of that one, action can follow. So often people will have a breakthrough on their limiting belief. They'll suddenly realize, oh, so I could do this. And then that works. So they do something and they get results. And then they hit another plateau. So that's fine. So then we can go, right, what's stopping you now? Find that limiting belief, get rid of it, and you can move forward again. So the whole process of achieving the impossible is not about like, magic puff of smoke and something appears. It's about moving in a direction that you want to move in and imagining those little green ropes, for example. Okay, so the way that we do the whole process now, if we put the whole process together, is we create a goal that's completely out of your reach, but something that you actually want. So if you don't want £1 billion, pounds, then probably don't set that as an outcome, because that's just a waste of your talents and abilities. If most people actually, when they say they want to be millionaires, the lifestyle that the actual amount of money that you have, that you need in order to have a really cool lifestyle often never goes above £200,000. So the average person, when you've got a great house, holidays, do anything you want to do, most people don't need more than £200,000 a year. And that's quite a nice amount of money. So you don't need to be kind of like, I want millions and millions of pounds, unless you really want millions and millions of pounds. So set the goal that you actually want, that matters to you, that isn't what you think you can have, but that is actually what you want. So we have a goal that's out of your reach, and then we just get you to walk towards it. And of course, the little green rope that goes taut first is the one that we deal with. So, we don't have to deal with your whole childhood. We just look at what prevented you and we cut that rope. So we deal with that limiting belief, whatever it is. I don't have the time. I don't know how to do something. There are no jobs, whatever it is. Then you keep walking and you notice which green rope goes tight the next. And obviously cut that one as well. That's our process, is that we deal with one green rope at a time, one limiting belief at a time. We don't need to deal with everything at once. To sum up, what are our limiting beliefs? How do we find what those beliefs are? Often just the question, what prevents you, is enough to start with. Take that thing you always wanted. What prevents you from having it? What prevents you from having it now? What reasons and excuses do you use as to why you don't have that in your life? And we're not being hard on you by saying reasons and excuses. Genuinely, that's what they feel like. And if you want something that's out of reach currently, then we need to be really honest about what we're telling ourselves. And since everyone is human, we're all doing it, there's nothing to feel bad about. It's just those are the reasons and excuses that I'm using. And my job is to help you to realize that those reasons and excuses are just that. And that we can challenge them so that you can effortlessly move forward. Again, same amount of energy to prove what you can't have as to prove what you can, and help you get what you want. So now we want to look at how do we set an outcome in the way that our brain actually understands what it wants from us. So if you understand how the unconscious mind works and how, remember the filters of deletion, distortion, generalization. So we understand that our brain, once focused on something, will head towards that unconsciously, effortlessly, and it will also filter in information around us to help us get there as well. By understanding how that actually works, we can set outcomes and program them into our unconscious mind. So most of the time people are aware of athletes using visualization, and that by visualizing something, our brain almost acts as if it's real. So it kind of understands what we're asking. So if we read something, read a goal that we've written down, we still need to be able to visualize, kind of translate that into, well, what does that look like? No matter what it is. So what we do is we start with what's the outcome that you actually want and help you visualize it. Now there's also a way to visualize it so that you'll get the kind of maximum positive effect. So for example, if you just visualize your, let's take something materialistic, let's say you want a new car, and you just start to visualize the kind of car that you want, then all your reticular activating system, the bit that does the focusing and the deletion, all that reticular activating system is going to do is show you that kind of car in your environment. So you'll be down the motorway and you'll suddenly be thinking, why does everyone have that type of car? I thought it was quite rare. Turns out everyone's got it. Or at least it's much more popular than I thought. So what we want to do is almost create future memories of what we want. So we need to create movie scenes that contextualize within our lives. So with the car example, what we want you to do is visualize yourself in the car, driving it, so seeing it through your own eyes, and feeling the way that you feel with it being your car, and also seeing any evidence, any contextual cues or markers that would tell you it's yours and you didn't just hire it or steal it or borrow it or whatever. That it's actually your car. So that might be that you're driving it to, and up the driveway of your current house, or the house, if you're setting an outcome a bit further in to the future, the house that you want to live in. But you want to see it contextualized in a scene of your life when you think you want it. So if it's now, and we always recommend setting an outcome as soon as you'd be ready for it. So if you didn't want to retire for another 10 years, then don't visualize it tomorrow. But if you don't mind retiring, then just see it happening as soon as you possibly can, and then you're more likely to achieve it sooner. So let's just say you're driving this car that you want into your driveway and experiencing everything that you feel about that car being yours, the power, the freedom, whatever it brings you, driving it into, in front of your house, and then you get out of the car and you lock it and you walk into your house and you see your family and so on. So whatever the scene is, it could be picking the car up from the dealer, It could be driving from the dealership. You choose what the evidence is that tells you that you achieved it, that you can afford it. It's yours and it's right for you. So feel all the feelings that you want to have with it. Then what we do is a little process where we program that outcome into your unconscious mind, so that rather than, you might have heard of vision boards and having pictures of things that you want all around your office and so on, things like that. That's great because it's a constant reminder to you of what to focus on, so it helps your RAS to keep focused. However, you already have a mechanism in your unconscious mind to do that for you. So you really don't need to have pictures around you to remind you. You can have one in your unconscious mind and it does it automatically. So we'll do that now. Get yourself comfortable and close your eyes. And once you know what it is that you want, just pick something for the purposes of this exercise if necessary. And I want you to close your eyes and step into that movie scene. But I want you to imagine that you're in that movie scene experiencing the achievement of this outcome. And I want you to play it through from beginning to end through your own eyes. So you're seeing it and experiencing it as if it was happening now. See it when you want it. See anyone else that's involved. Look at the evidence that tells you that you've achieved it and feel the feelings of having that in your life. So what does your life look like when you have that outcome? That dream job, that car, that partner, that joy. What does that feel like? What does it look like in your life? What's that scene that you want to experience in the future? It depicts how your life will be as a result of achieving that outcome. Feel all those feelings, see what you see, hear what you hear. Breathe how you breathe when you have that outcome, and listen to what you say to yourself when you have that in your life. And enjoy that scene. Make it perfect. Why not? Make it exactly the way that you want it. Okay, right the way through, maybe a couple of times. Just to adjust anything, make it absolutely good. Now, play it through again, through your own eyes. And I want you to imagine that you take a particular element of that scene, the best moment in that scene. And I want you to imagine that someone is taking a picture of you, someone you care about. And they're taking a picture of that scene that completely and utterly depicts that achievement for you. And I want you to imagine that they can give you that picture to hold in your hands. And you look at that picture and look how gorgeous that picture is. And as it develops, you can really get a sense of how fantastic this scene is, this achievement. Just everything about it is just the way you want it. And I want you to imagine now, you could take that picture that represents that movie scene. And I want you to imagine that you can notice that the future stretches out in one direction in relation to you in the past in another, essentially creating kind of like a line of time. And I want you to imagine that you could move into the future along that line of time, whether it's in front of you, to the side of you, does not matter. But I want you to imagine that you can float up above that line and zoom into the future until you get to the place in time that you want this outcome to happen. That's tomorrow, that's fine. If it's next year, it doesn't matter. When do you want it to happen? Now you might find that as you approach that time, the photograph starts to tug out of your hands. It kind of really feels pulled towards that future timeline of yours. So as you're floating there, just imagine that when you get above that time that you want that to occur, you just let go of the photo and it zooms down into that line of time, that future of yours, and takes place right where it's supposed to happen. And then notice as ripples of success, as a result of that achievement, more and more, like a domino effect, more and more things start to happen in your future. Now that you're convinced, until more and more scenes are taking place into your future and make you happy. And then if you turn round and look towards the present day in that future event, and notice that everything that you need is being drawn towards your timeline like a magnet. Obstacles are being overcome. People, resources, time, money, ideas, everything that you need is like a magnet being pulled towards your timeline, creating almost stepping stones towards the achievement of this inevitable event. And feel how certain it feels now that you have decided that you want this. And as a consequence, almost like the universe rearranges itself to allow you to have it. And when you're sure it's out there, and it's there waiting for you just where it should be, go all the way back to the present day, noticing how things are now starting to change, all the way to the present day. Reorientate yourself so that you're facing the right way, and come back down into the now and open your eyes. The way that we start to deal with limiting beliefs, first of all, we need to know what they are, and then we need to challenge them. Now, as a coach, I've got numerous tools that I can use to help you remove even the most entrenched limiting beliefs. And most of those will happen via coaching and individually. So all I'm going to show you now is one mechanism that you could start with at home. First thing that we do is we ask you first of all, what is it that you want? So we take that outcome that you set earlier, and we just get like a top line brief statement like, I want to do X for a living. I want to do ABC for a living. I want to earn this amount of money. I want to achieve my sales targets, blah, 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 whatever it is. And then you just say, what's preventing you? And whatever the reasons and excuses are, make a list. So those reasons and excuses might start with, I don't have the time, it's not possible, I'm not good enough, there's no way I can do that in the time, people don't do, people don't just give you things, whatever the limiting belief or the reasons and excuses are, write them down. Now, if you want to, then you can do something called a loosening process first. And all you do is you take each one of those excuses and reasons and you go through them, and all you do is a little exercise, and you can do this with a partner. It's a lot of fun, and we call it a bullshit exercise, because essentially you say, right, what is it that you want? I want my dream job doing ABC. What prevents you? My dream job would never pay that much money. And you come up with whatever the reason excuses. Then your partner or you says, that's bullshit. And then you reply, okay, the bullshit I tell myself is my dream job would never pay that much. Now, as simple as that sounds, there is a big difference between, and on the live event we'll show you how language can completely disempower you or empower you. And therefore, when you linguistically change what you're doing and say, the bullshit I tell myself is that I can't have what I want because, something changes in your brain in the way that you think about that limiting belief. And that's all we're interested in at the moment, is loosening it. We're not actually removing it at this stage. Just loosening it can be enough. So you say, okay, so the bullshit I tell myself is that my dream job will never pay that much money. What's the truth? And then you just come up with something. Doesn't, you know, even if you still don't believe it, or you can't think of anything, just say it again. The bullshit I tell myself is this. The bullshit I tell myself is this. Great, what's the truth? And then come up with something. So it might be, okay, so someone's getting paid to do that. Someone's getting paid that much money to do that. And then you go on to the next reason and excuse. So whatever it is. And then you take that reason and excuse, the bullshit I tell myself is X, Y, Z. So you keep challenging the bullshit in your head and assume that it is bullshit. We need it to be bullshit for you to be able to achieve this. So there shouldn't be any resistance to doing this, because we already know you believe it. We already know it feels true. We already know that what you want is impossible. Play along and try to trick your brain out of believing it, so that we can actually see the truth and grow and expand and see something else and see the possibilities and opportunities that you need. The next thing that we do is an exercise where you take the belief that you have, the current limiting belief, and all you do is come up with evidence for that limiting belief. So if somebody says, okay, so I can't sell a product, we ask why not. So what prevents you? So I can't sell a product because people won't spend that much money on something. People won't spend that much money on the product. So then you want to find what's the opposite of that. Now, essentially it's what's not that belief. We're not trying to prove the opposite, we're just trying to prove that isn't true. So we just need something around about the opposite. So people won't spend that much money on the product. People will spend money on that product. All we do is we list the evidence underneath the belief people won't. So we can say, okay, well, we've asked people and they've said, no, it's too expensive. That's a pretty good piece of evidence. That would convince most people. We can also say, I wouldn't. Like if you know, I wouldn't spend that much money on that. I don't think it's worth it. And you just kind of pull out all the bits of evidence that you've got. Experience will be on there, but you don't need to go to town. We already know that you believe it, so we don't need a huge amount of evidence. And then what we need on the other side is the key. So now what we're trying to do is force your brain to find some evidence that the other belief could be true, or at least that there's contradictory evidence to what you currently believe. So on the other side, people will spend that much money on your product, would be, well, people have bought it before. Okay, that's interesting. People spend money on less important things. You know, people spend money on holidays and they find money for, other things that aren't as good as my product, and so on and so on. So once you've got some evidence, and there always will be some if you look hard enough, there will always be some contradictory evidence that you can put there. Once you've found it, now look at that evidence. So, okay, so if people have paid that money for your product before, what was different about them? So maybe it's certain types of people will spend that money on a product? Or was it the way you sold it to those people that was different? But work out what was, if when I did sell it to those people, what was different? What is more true than just people won't buy my product or it's too expensive? What's more accurate? So it's actually, okay, so motivated people, so maybe they had a particular reason to buy your product, they had a particular problem they were trying to solve. What was it specifically about those people or the way you sold it or something that made that true then? And then what you can do is redefine your existing belief to something more accurate and helpful. So instead of people won't spend that much money on the product, it's actually these types of people will. And when I sell it with this in mind, people buy it, and so on and so on. So you start realizing, actually, hang on a minute, when I focus on the evidence that I can sell that product, I learn a hell of a lot more than when I focus on not being able to. So that's the first strategy to start challenging your limiting beliefs. Not removing them, but challenging them, and then focusing and learning from the evidence that proves something else could be true. And that will give you your next step forward. So that's all we're trying to do, is give you another step forward. So break that little green rope so you can move forward. So after that experience, it might be, what could you do differently now to sell your product? And immediately someone might go, actually, do you know what? What I need to do is change what I'm marketing. I need to market more to the people that actually have bought it, those types of people, or I need to sell it this way. So perhaps you were more enthusiastic about something when you sold it to certain people. But you only need one step forward, one thing different to try. Because now you're focused differently, you will have different energy moving forward. That's the first one is the bullshit exercise, to change how you're talking to yourself about your limiting beliefs and to uncover what they are. And then the second one is to start forcing your reticular activating system to look for evidence that disproves your limiting beliefs and learns what actually might be a way forward. So those are just two very kind of simple things that you can do. Next time you come up against an obstacle, do the same thing. So take the next limiting belief, challenge that. And that's all you need to do for now. On the live event, you'll get to do this for yourself. So you'll actually get to uncover and challenge your limiting beliefs with some help from me. Most important kind of ways to achieve anything is to have a sense of resilience, because it's a process of kind of working towards something, finding an obstacle, overcoming it, working towards something, finding an obstacle, overcoming it. And we have to be better at managing setbacks in our life. We have to, in order to achieve things, we need to kind of see those moments differently and learn from them. And take that failure, instead of disappointment, we need to take that as feedback, as learning, because there's vital information in that experience that will inevitably lead to your success. But if you ignore it and don't learn from it, then you're missing out on that opportunity. How does our brain actually comprehend the world around us? Our brain takes in information, remember, and takes it in as kind of events. So things happening around us. So a nice easy way is kind of, what do you see happening? Now, the next thing our brain does is slaps a meaning on that experience immediately. And naturally it does this because it needs to know how to respond to what's happening. Now, naturally, in order to respond, our physiology needs to change in order to help us respond in the right way. So if the meaning is I'm in danger, naturally the next thing that's going to happen is our physiology, our state of being is going to change to one of alarm or fight or flight. Our heart rate's going to increase and so on and so on to get us in the prime position to respond. And therefore the behavior comes next. So then we can respond to the situation, and the result is kind of how it ended. And then this little program goes into our unconscious mind for next time to kind of tell us that's what's going to happen next time. The next time the twig snaps, it's going to, we'll assume it's danger, and we'll go into immediate fight or flight, and we'll respond the way we respond. And obviously, if we survived it, it was useful, we'll do it again. So this is what's happening in our unconscious minds pretty much every time anything happens. So the moment something happens, our brain says, what does it mean? And it knows what it means because what did it mean last time? Now, the critical thing here is that whatever we decide something means is what will dictate what happens next. And yet, there is no meaning attached to anything. You take any event and nothing in the world comes with any kind of rule book about what it should mean. We all have to make our own minds up about what everything means for us. But make up our minds we do, so we always put a meaning on something, even if we don't even know what it means yet. But whatever you decide it means will dictate what happens next. It will dictate how you feel and how you behave, and thus ultimately your results in life. Resilient people tend to do one of two things. They either abstain from deciding what anything means until they see it play out to its ultimate conclusion, or they decide it means something positive. A great example is where you have two children from, let's say, a broken home, domestic violence, and so on. One ends up a homeless alcoholic. The other one ends up a very famous TV star, very rich and successful. And if you ask them what the secret of their success was, they'll both give you the same answer. What choice did I have when you look at where I came from? We can't say that it's the events in our life that dictate what happens to us and what dictate our experience of life. What dictates our experience of life is the meanings that we attribute to those events. And those are arbitrary. You get to decide what those are. And as Viktor Frankl says, that it doesn't matter what happens to you, no one can ever take that away from you. You have the choice to decide what something means for you. And you can decide this is going to be the making of me, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I will change this. You can make anything mean anything to you, but choose an empowering meaning. So resilient people just choose empowering meanings so that they can respond better to the situation. It's not always easy, but it is a choice. And if you need help doing that, then that's my job, is to help you find a more empowering meaning to something. Because in the moment, we can't always know. So in the moment we go, shit, that's not what we wanted. That's not fair. That's crap. And we get really upset. But we don't know what this is going to mean longer term. So you get to decide. This is going to be the making of me. This is the last time that happens. Now I'm going to learn something. I'm going to change something. This is a good thing. Or I'm going to make this mean something positive. I'm going to help other people because of my experience. Whatever you want. You don't have to do this. But even when people have gone through tragedy, there comes a time when most people will sit and think, I need to make this mean something better than what I've decided. And then they start helping other people to to move on, or they make it into something positive. So even with tragedies, you can do this if you want to. Nobody gets to tell you how to live your life. Nobody gets to tell you what meanings to attribute to anything, but it's up to you. All we know is that resilient people pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and decide something empowering as a meaning. There's a farmer and his son, and they live on a farm in a very small village where everybody knows everybody's business. And quite often the neighbours will come round to the farm and they'll say, oh, you've got these gorgeous, this gorgeous horse, and because of this horse you can plough the fields, and your son can work very hard and you can sell the crops, and you're just so lucky with everything that you have. It's, that having that horse, best thing that ever happened to you. And the farmer, who's very wise, just sort of shrugs his shoulders and kind of says, maybe. Now, one day, there's a horrible thunderstorm, horrible lightning storm, and their beautiful horse gets spooked and bolts off into the forest, and they can't find him. And of course, the neighbours come round, they're going, oh, this is the worst thing that could have ever have happened to you, because without your horse, you can't plough the fields, you can't sow the crops, you can't sell anything at market, you'll probably become absolutely poverty-stricken and die homeless and alone. And of course, the farmer, who's very wise and prefers to reserve judgment, just says, maybe. A week later, storm has passed, and out of the forest trots their beautiful horse, and alongside that horse is another wild horse that he has befriended. And so now the farmer and his son have two horses. And the neighbours come round and they say, oh, happy days, this is amazing. Now you have two horses, oh my goodness, you'll be able to plough the crops even faster, you'll be able to sow more crops, you'll be able to sell more at market, you'll be rich and successful, and this is just the best thing that could have ever have happened. And the farmer, who's very wise and prefers to reserve judgment, just simply shrugs his shoulders and says, maybe. The next day, the farmer's son goes out to try and train the new horse to take the harness, and the wild horse kicks him and breaks his leg. So now the poor boy is in bed with a broken leg. And the neighbours come round and they say, oh my goodness, this is the worst thing that could have ever have happened. Now your son is injured, he won't be able to plough the fields and sow the crops, and you won't be able to sell anything, you'll have no money, you'll probably die penniless and alone. And the farmer, who's very wise and prefers to reserve judgment, just simply shrugs his shoulders and says, maybe. A few weeks later, the army come through town, conscripting all the young men from the village to take to war with them. But of course, they have no use for a boy with a broken leg, and so they leave him and pass through onto the next village. And of course, the neighbours come round and they say, oh, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you, because now your son will be with you through the war, he'll be able to help you plough the fields and sow the crops and make money, and you'll be rich and successful all the way through the war. This is the best thing that could have ever have happened to you. And the farmer, who's very wise and prefers to reserve judgment, simply shrugs his shoulders and says, maybe. Is the end of this little video series on achieving the impossible and peak performance, and we have so much more that we can talk to you about, but for now that's everything. So let me sum up what we've talked about today. I've explained how your brain works and that we have deletion and that you get what you focus on. Your brain deletes most of what's happening around you and only focuses on a very small amount of data. So make sure you're thinking about what you do want so that your little reticular activating system can focus in on how to get there. Those opportunities, if they are there, you will spot them more if you're talking about them and focused on the positive rather than on what you don't want. We've also explained about limiting beliefs and these generalizations, that map of the world that you have that contains all of your existing limiting beliefs about what's possible for you. And that we generalize and expect tomorrow to be the same as today based on our beliefs. We've also then seen that as the law of confirmation bias means that you select evidence that confirms what you already believe rather than contradicts it. So if you have a limiting belief, of course you're going to keep seeing evidence that proves you're right. And your reticular activating system will delete information that disproves it because you're not looking for it. Similarly, if you have a limiting belief, your brain will actually distort what you're seeing to fit in with it as well. So if someone who you think is not very kind suddenly gives you flowers, your brain won't allow you to think, oh, they're now suddenly kind. You're more likely to just twist that evidence as, okay, well, they want something, or they're just trying to be devious. But you will convince yourself of what you currently believe. Knowing all of that leads us to understand how the self-fulfilling prophecy works. And if you believe something, you keep seeing evidence to prove it, but also therefore keep behaving in such a way as to achieve that same outcome. If you don't believe something is possible, you are unlikely to put in the proper required amount of energy or come up with the right ideas to achieve it. We also looked at what are limiting beliefs. So they are anything that puts a limit on your potential, but also we're only concerned with the disempowering ones. So the ones that are in the way of what you want. So we looked at all the little green ropes that could be potentially in your map of the world, those little green ropes, and we're only concerned with those limiting beliefs, those little green ropes that are stopping you moving towards what it is that you want. We don't need to worry about the rest of them. They can just sit there and we'll deal with them if they ever get in the way of what we do want. Our way of dealing with things is then to manifest things, we need to set an outcome. And to set an outcome, you need to learn to fantasize and dream and tune into what you really want. And that's a skill. So it's okay if that takes a bit of time to really figure that out. Start small and pick something you definitely know that you want and that feels good for you, and head towards that. Create a movie scene where you have that in your life. So it's an ongoing experience of having something in your life. And then you put that goal in timeline. So you kind of program that into your unconscious mind to set up an expectation, so that map of the world, that that's going to happen. And what that will do is start the process of you moving towards it unconsciously, and you'll be able to overcome those obstacles along the way. So once you've set your outcome, then you need to align with it. And aligning with it just means removing those limiting beliefs that say you can't have it. And how do we do that? So we ask you, what is it you want? And now what stops you from getting it? first thing you can do is the bullshit exercise. So you can just reframe everything that you say is stopping you as those reasons and excuses as the bullshit I tell myself is I can't have it because. And just linguistically start to loosen your grip around those beliefs. The next thing that you can do is take those limiting beliefs that are still in your mind, are still real, and as the reasons why you can't have something, and actively try to prove the opposite is true. So, use those little goggles and find some evidence that to the contrary. And what's going to be interesting is what's different about when you do prove it. What is it about that evidence that is more accurate than just I can't do X because. So I can do X when, and start to hone in on when it is possible, what's different. And that's when you'll start to learn something more accurate than these generalized limiting beliefs. As I said, there are loads and loads of ways that we can really powerfully remove those limiting beliefs from your unconscious mind. These are just two very superficial things that you can do to start the process. But if you want coaching on some core beliefs, then that is also possible, and it's much more powerful and sort of deeper work that we can do. I'll also be doing a video to show you how to do that as well. So one other tool that's a little bit more powerful, and I'll show you how to do that on another video. Finally, then we looked at resilience, and resilience is about the attitude that you have along the way to achieving whatever it is that you want. And we know that sometimes you're going to experience setbacks. So although you've said, right, well, I want this, but I didn't get it, you need to decide that that means something good. You need to look at failure as feedback, learn from it, get up and go again. And keep honing and keep honing and honing until you get what you want. Because this is not a kind of one-step process. This is just, you're going to put in the same amount of energy every day to get what you do want as to get what you don't. So you may as well use the process and put the energy towards what you do want. And all you've got to do is look at the meanings that you give things, because nothing is defined in the world. You get to decide what things mean for you. So if an event happens and you're not completely sure that it's a good thing, either abstain from giving it a meaning or decide it means something good. Decide it's going to be the reason why you get what you want, and utilize everything to that effect. And that's what resilient people do. They pick themselves up, they decide it means something empowering, and they go again. And eventually you will get what you want. Most people get it very quickly when they start using these processes. So if you use the process, it is just about how fast you can get through this process, because the moment that you are aligned with what you want, it will show up. The moment that you have removed the limiting beliefs, you can see it, you can have it, you can do the right things to get it. So when you believe it, that's when you'll see it. And my job is to help you believe. And we don't believe by sitting and wishing. We believe by removing the limiting beliefs, because under the limiting beliefs is your innate childhood belief in anything, and that anything is possible. So my job is to help you remove anything that's in your way. I really look forward to seeing you at a live event soon. If you have any questions, then drop me an email to jess@jessicarobbins.co.uk, and I will do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. Thanks very much. Bye for now.